You're now tuned in to the cold, hard truth. Cayman's #1 hard-hitting live podcast show, where we feature some straightforward conversations on political, social, and celebrity news and all things happening in the Cayman Islands and around the world. This show was created to give the people a voice and a means of being involved and informed without any filters. Sometimes it gets crazy, but we always keep it real. We bring you the tea, piping hot, so grab your favorite beverage and join the conversation via WhatsApp at 324-1612. Email tips@caymanmarlroad.com. Now, here's your host, Sandy Hill, broadcasting live from the beautiful Cayman Islands.
There, ta-da! How is everyone doing today? Good morning, good morning, good morning. Let me see who is joining me today. We have got a long list of things to talk about, and I am hopeful that we are able to get through all of them. So I am just checking my settings this morning. The beautiful Ronika was the first one on the keypad. Good job, Ronika. Guess what? I've got a gift certificate for you. Popeyes or Burger King, your choice. You message me and let me know, and I will certainly hook you up with those. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Got tons of people up and about this morning, messaging me, sending me videos. Oh no, we have a death this morning. Aw. In just a second. Ugh, nothing like bad news to start our day off. Buenos dias, Elizabeth. ¿Cómo estás? Olivia, good morning to you, my dear. Cayman Vlogs. It's so lovely to see you. Now, Cayman Vlogs, I don't know which person you are in that picture, but that's a beautiful picture. Both of you look good, regardless of whether you're the man or the beautiful young lady. Brandon, has us locked in on YouTube as well. Good morning, Brandon. Hello, Marshall, all the way from the North Carolinas. There's only one North Carolina. We say the Carolinas, I'm well aware, but there is a North and a South Carolina. But it still sounded kind of interesting saying the North Carolinas. But you know, they probably get offended like how we do here in the Cayman Islands when people say the Caymans. We're like, we ain't the Caymans. We are the Cayman Islands. And how hard is it to add that extra word, islands? But people call us the Caymans all the time. Melita, Morna. Yes, it is a beautiful Thursday here in the Cayman Islands. Good morning, Beulah. You know, my windows are a little bit tinted, and I think that's why it's a little bit more challenging for me to get my lighting just right, because I'm not getting natural light coming through my windows. Because children, let me tell you, I am trying to not pay CUC every month if I can help it. And so what that means for me is energy efficiency. So I have done everything in my power to try to be as energy efficient as possible. One of these days, I got to tell you guys about all the things that I have done to try to reduce my bill and not have a second mortgage to pay, because, whoa, I can't take paying CUC thousands of dollars every month. That's just crazy. So I did a lot, including solar. And one day I'm going to tell you guys about my journey of being able to tweak what we have in our home to try to be more energy efficient. And I tell you what, even with solar, you're more likely going to have a lesser bill than a zero bill. But there have been months when there's a lot of sunshine that we have gotten a credit and we've had a zero bill. In fact, for maybe about 6 or 7 months, we didn't pay a bill at all. But that's for another day. We got a lot of politics to talk about this morning, but I'm going to tell you guys all about that, because maybe I need to invite James on here and we can do a whole discussion on solar and all those good things. Diana, good morning to you, beautiful. Shirley is here with us, as well as Melissa. Good to see you. Melissa's joining us from Roatan, the Bay Islands. So Melissa, how is it in the Bay Islands? Sai is also here, and we know that she is, Sai, you're somewhere in the States, if I recall correctly. And the beautiful Catherine Greg David is here. Thank you so much, Catherine. And Melita says, a flock of birds flying southeast. A literal flock of birds or figurative flock of birds? All right, good people. Good morning to Larry. Larry's joining us from New York. Yes, Sai's in Naples, Florida. The beautiful Naples, Florida. Naples is a very, I don't know, is that still a retirement city? It used to be when I lived in Florida. Like a lot of the, Florida has a lot of retirees all over Florida. But Naples in particular has a lot. So yes, Catherine, thank you so much. I appreciate the love and support. Catherine is also joining us from the US. And Sai says, yes, still a lot of old folks here in Naples, Florida. And we would expect no less of Jake than to be at the gym. Seriously, Jake impresses me every single morning. He motivates me. He gets up and does what I should be doing, which is hitting the gym and working out. So hats off to Jake. I applaud him for having the motivation. And I've listen, hard work pays off, folks. That's an easy formula that I can tell you, especially when it comes to the gym. It does work. So I've had the pleasure of seeing Jake about a month or so ago. I was going to physio, which, by the way, Jake, I'm back at physio. I think I'm going today. Yes, actually, I'm going today. So I'm back at physio today. I took a week or so off, but I'm back at it. So I might see you there again. Sai says there's a few Caymanians in Naples. Huh, isn't that amazing? I tell you what, for as small as we are well represented in certain areas, including Florida. I do recall, however, when I first moved to the States in the 80s, and people would be like, where are you from? I was just a kid. And so I'd be like, oh, the Cayman Islands. And they said, is that Jamaica? And I'm like, what? You don't know where the Cayman Islands are? And then they're like, is that the Bahamas? It's like Americans only knew two places at that time in the Caribbean, Jamaica and the Bahamas and Cuba. And that was it. And so I was always like, no, the Cayman Islands, we're our own little island, British, no, not ringing a bell. So yeah, it was kind of interesting in the 80s. And then I'll tell you what really happened in Florida in particular is when Cayman Airways started that direct flight from Grand Cayman to Tampa. And then everyone in Tampa, because they used to do these commercials. Remember, some of you might be too young, but those who fly us love us. Do you guys remember that jingle? And so every time after that I would send from the Cayman Islands, people would start singing the jingle. Talk about the power of advertising and having a song or a jingle or, extremely powerful. So JD said that he went through the same thing at USF. Is that Jamaica? How long ago were you at USF? Because, I am a USF alumni, the Bulls. We are very proud of our university. Now, I graduated in the late 90s from USF. And let me think, that was 96. And we didn't have a football team yet. So now you guys are so lucky. You come along, you get a football team. But when I went to USF, we did have a decent basketball team in terms of collegiate basketball. So Jackie says, when I was a little girl living in Tampa, we had relatives in Naples. So yes, we have a presence there for a long time. Wow. But Tampa has been a hub, Jackie, for Caymanians for a very long time. And in fact, what I think is so amazing and so interesting about Tampa is when the Lee Rich book came out recently, and he was talking about how he grew up in Tampa, I was like reminiscing about certain areas of Tampa that he mentioned. Now, I haven't read the entire book, but the snippets that I read, I was reminiscing about what parts of Tampa he lived in and that sort of thing. And in fact, my aunt lived there from the oh my gosh, I want to say at least the 40s or 50s. So she was there a long time, but she had left Cayman as a child and went there and lived with her dad and her aunt and stuff like that, because my grandmother, Miss Jane, would have passed away when she was relatively small. So she migrated when she was young. So she knew some Caymanians, but it wasn't like she had just left Cayman and she knew everybody. So she knew like a lot of the older heads. And I remember her always asking me about super old people that I had no clue who they were. So she'd be like, oh, well, what about Captain so-and-so? And I was like, I don't know who that is. I mean, funny enough, because I left when I was so young, I didn't know a whole lot of people. Like I was in the 4th grade, And of course, your memories of the people around you in the 4th grade when you're like in junior high school and high school and you become an adult, you're just like, so when I moved back, she would always be asking me about people. And I was like, Aunt Lottie, I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't know those people. I'm just trying to get to know people. But, ironically enough, a lot of people remembered me from before I left. So when they would see me, they'd be like, oh gosh, you've come back. And I was like, trust me, there is no place like home. So JD was the class of 2017. Oh my gosh. Wow. That's amazing. And people still are asking you, where's the camera? Now they need to do better. But there was a time when we were literally not even on the map. Like they would draw maps and we were lucky if we got like a little dot, and now thankfully we do get a little bit of a shape and we get a mention for like hurricanes and stuff like that. And a lot of wealthier people I found in Tampa at the time knew where the Cayman Islands were. They were like, oh yeah, I used to go there in my private jet and da-da-da. And I'm like, okay, probably doing the same thing Lee Rich was doing, running some money in some private jets and dropping off the bags to be counted. So Sai says Naples a bit expensive. Interesting. She knows a Caymanian lady. She migrated here in Naples, and she told me that she used to come here to buy furniture, food, and send it back until she met her husband. Oh, okay. Yes, Caymanians have done that for many, many years, where we have, I find it's not so much, now it's more of trying to get the variety of things that you want, but the prices over the years have come down significantly. And in fact, I recall when I first moved back, I was flabbergasted at times by the prices being 4 and 5 times what I would have paid for stuff in the US. And I get it in terms of a smaller economy and people trying to make a profit off of fewer people, but I still never quite understood what that was, So we do have Alric, who is waiting in the wings, and we're going to bring him in here now because Alric is going to tell us a little bit about what transpired yesterday in the Legislative Assembly. So it was a big day, in case you missed it. We've already done, I think, one story out of the LA proceedings. There's more to come. But Alric is going to give us a rundown because he took the time out of his day to actually go to the LA and sit down and have a listen. And I wish I could have done that yesterday, but unfortunately I couldn't. So Alric, I want you to give us, he's going to be almost like a correspondent reporter this morning. He is going to give us a little snippet of what transpired, and then we'll get back to our regular conversation because Alric is a working man, folks. So he's got to get to work this morning. Are you ready, Alric? Good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Sandra, and good morning to all your guests.
Thank you so much for joining us. So what was the highlight of what transpired yesterday in the LA?
Well, I would say the biggest announcement was, which came as a surprise to many people, including the opposition, was the announcement or declaration by the premier that the minister responsible for finance would be up to the task in succeeding him. Which is Roy McTaggart, So
yes, I knew that from last week. So I'm surprised the opposition was surprised by that.
Well, Road is always the one at first, So that we're 1 week behind or a month behind, but Mall Road gets it first. And
yes.
that one should tune in. I know that people refer to you as the online blog site, but Mall Road does get the information first. And, if there's anything to correct, Mall Road will correct it. But back to the story, so Roy McTaggart as the next premier, we were talking about this a few days ago, who could be the next premier? And when you consider that we're in a tough situation financially, the comment I had a few days ago was we need someone with a strong financial background, including the other skills that are needed. So I initially mentioned Chris Saunders because I know Chris is very detailed and, Chris is always very factual, and he presents his information very clearly. So initially I said, what about Chris Saunders, And I couldn't think of anyone else that has a really strong financial background. And then Roy McTaggart's name came up, and the fact that he had been a partner of KPMG, which is a good firm, and how he's probably shown proven leadership. So I wasn't totally surprised that was suggested, that Roy succeed the premier. But what's going to be controversial is that we have other long-standing politicians in the room. We have Mr. Arden, we have Ezard, we have some very long-standing politicians that are probably looking to be premier as a part of their career goal. So it will be very interesting to see how the other long-standing politicians respond. And
let's be clear here. Mr. Roy McTaggart isn't necessarily going to be premier. He's just the leader designate of the PPM, which is his political party. So who becomes premier will certainly depend on the election results. And as we can see, the PPM has a lot of clout in negotiating with the CDP. So we have a coalition government at the moment, but we're going to get into, I know you've got limited time, and that's my discussion, one of my discussion points this morning, is how all of this could potentially work out. So I want to take my time really explaining it to our audience members. But can you tell us what else happened in the LA yesterday, that was of interest? I know there was a lot of reading of reports and sort of updates and stuff like that. So what else transpired that you thought was noteworthy?
Well, I'll go through the points that I noted. So the premier gave a State of a Nation address, and I'm not going to change his words and be scandalous. He said we need to chart a course toward prosperity, and we need to be vigilant about another outbreak coming about. He talked about a new curriculum, which is going to be based on England, to be introduced in the primary schools. He talked about getting the tourism sector working again, with stayover tourism expected to recover first. He talked about the development sector doing well at this time. He talked about the financial services sector continuing to carry on during this period. He talked about government seeking expressions of interest on the idea of a third undersea information and technology communications cable. I think that's between here and Miami, I think. He talks about plans to accelerate the delivery of a national energy policy, which part I think the goal was to be 70% renewable energy by a certain date. So he plans to get there by reducing energy consumption, improving efficiency, introducing energy saving measures. Plans to help government to reduce its footprint, because government buildings are pretty large, and he seems to be some plan to make those buildings more efficient. I don't know if it's going to mean that we're going to put solar on some of the roofs. I'm not too sure. Other item he noted was getting technical experts from the UK to assist with this energy, which is very interesting, because I thought that we had some experts here, in particular, Mr. James Whitaker. So he talked about using waste as a resource, and talked about early works contracts being signed. I think that's with DART, I think. He talked about so those are the major things. And one of the other things that was sort of mentioned was the direction of Cayman in general. And I got the impression, I could be wrong, and I stand to be corrected, but I got the general impression that there was an idea that we should move away from protectionist policies, and Caymanians must recognize that they are a part of a global, international, competitive world now. I got the impression that the idea was that for Caymanians to just pull up their socks and work hard and compete with the people that we're bringing from overseas with all of the knowledge and experience. And my personal comment to that is, there was a time that you could say that Caymanians didn't have the qualifications and experience, but that time is gone, because now we have a lot more Caymanians who have gone away to university. We have Caymanians that are entering trade schools and who are doing non-traditional types of skills in construction and hospitality, and more Caymanians entering in non-traditional fields. So what I would say to the idea of Caymanians are benefiting from protectionist policies, that's not the case. What the case is that we have an immigration law that's not enforced. So to suggest that the only way we could progress is from protectionist policy, I think that's a little misleading. I don't think Caymanians want a protectionist policy. I think Caymanians simply want the immigration law to be enforced and simply want a level playing field. When I came back from university in 1990s and I qualified as a certified public accountant, I fully came in on the idea that we were told that you get your degree, you get your professional designation, you work hard, you make contributions to your firm and your country, and you would be recognized. But I quickly learned coming back from university that when I looked around, I didn't see a lot of Caymanians in top positions. So my colleagues at the time were from Ireland and Scotland and England, and they're all very good guys, very smart people. However, what I found was the type of work that locals got versus what other people got was a little different. We had locals who always said, we want better quality work, meaning they wanted to get on the bigger engagements. They wanted to get better client contact. They want to get higher end, higher value type of work. The reason we were saying this is because that's one of the things that they look at when they determine who's going to get promoted. They look at a number of things, and the quality of work that you're doing and the amount of business development that you do, the amount of marketing that you do towards you being promoted. And the reason I'm bringing this up is that when we tend to bring in people from overseas, there is an aggressive approach to have trained and promoted. And so they get the better quality work, they get the bigger portfolio. When it comes time for promotion, of course, the powers that be will look at those people to promote them, because those are the people that they're pushed. Those are the people that were provided with opportunities. So I think in the case of Caymanians, we have a lot of Caymanians that are highly qualified now and have experience, but they just don't have the support. They don't have that push. They don't have that aggressive approach to training and promotion. Instead, what happens to a lot of Caymanians who are professionals is that they're constantly told that they're not ready. And
my apologies, Alric. I was actually looking at the time wrong this morning. I know you said that you had a conference call at 9 o'clock, and I was looking at the clock thinking it was 9 o'clock now. That's I was kind of rushing you a little bit. So my apologies
no rush.
for that. I've just realized it's only 8 o'clock in the morning. It's nowhere near 9 o'clock. Okay, so listen, let's just back it up a bit then. Now that I realize we have a full 56 minutes, which is plenty time, we can delve a little bit deeper. So let me backtrack because I want to talk about this point of qualified Caymanians and what their expectations are, because you were certainly in that arena, right? So you would know better than anyone what is out there and what's the field of the feeling that's on the ground. So first, let's go back to Mr. McTaggart. First of all, I want to congratulate Mr. McTaggart on his appointment. Like I said, I personally was not surprised by this. And ironically enough, when I heard it last week, Wednesday, I started trying to confirm it because, if we put it out there like, oh, there's a rumor that this is what's happening, PPM always wants to say these things are a lie, which 99% of the time they're not. But, I wanted to kind of fact check it. So I went straight to some horses' mouths in the PPM establishment and ministers so basically this is what we knew. On the Mall Road, of course, PPM will never confirm any of this, but we do know that there were two other ministers vying for the position quite strongly, much younger than Mr. McTaggart. One of those ministers was Joey Hugh, which is Georgetown
North.
Right. I think I put the wrong district for him in this article that we did, by the way. Let me fix that quickly. Right. So he's Georgetown North. And then there was Tara Rivers, which is West Bay South. Georgetown. There we go. All right. So, and then I don't recall ever hearing, in fact, that the deputy premier right now, who's Moses Kirkernel, I've heard recently that he may not even be running again. I mean, I find that hard to believe, because to me, that's kind of like Mr. Anthony every year says he's not going to, every 4 years says, okay, this is it, he's retiring, and then he ends up running again. So it's kind of like some people, when they say that, you go, we'll take a wait and see attitude. So there were a couple of younger heads, ministers. As we know, I think this is Joey's first time as a minister. You can correct me if I'm wrong. But Tara Rivers, this is her second ministerial position. Last time she was Minister of Education. And I don't think anybody was impressed necessarily with Tara's performance. This is just my honest assessment of the situation. This is Joey's first time as minister. And this is actually Mr. McTaggart's first time as minister as well. So in the last government, he was a consular. I forgot what ministry he fell under, but he's kind of one of those people that I think goes really unrecognized. Like you kind of hardly know he's there. He's very quiet and more on the reserve side. And obviously, you know, he has been involved in putting together some of the responses for the COVID pandemic. There have been a lot of things that they've done financially. But even looking back on that, at the number of press conferences that he attended, he wasn't really, I mean, he attended, I guess, the ones that he felt he needed to and said what he needed to do. And then that was it. A lot of it was Joey. So I think a lot of people actually thought that the sort of, you know, designated leader would be Joey Hugh, and that didn't happen. So as of last week, we actually received significant feedback that it was actually Mr. McTaggart. So when I reached out to one of the PPM ministers, the response that I got from them on Friday, because we started digging on Wednesday, over a week ago, into the story. And then on Friday, one of these individuals said that the discussions were happening, of course, nothing is final until the conference is held. And now I look back at what the premier has actually said yesterday, and I'm scratching my head because the conference is nowhere near being held and the decision is obviously final. So I do not know, and this brings me to a point that I want to make about political parties. And then, Alec, we can kind of pick back up where you were going with your conversation. But this brings me to the point about political parties and what we anticipate happening in the next election, right? And I see that Johan is here weighing in on the conversation as well in terms of that, projections for the May 2021 election. So we've had several registered parties. The two that really stand out since the last constitutional amendment have been the People's Progressive Movement, who've now, I think, officially changed their name to just the PPM, or the Progressives. And we have the UDP, which was the United Democratic Party, who changed to the CDP, which stands for, I can't even remember, to be honest. That shows you how irrelevant they are. Is it the Cayman Democratic Party? I honestly cannot remember what the C stands for, but it could be. That would make sense. Cayman Democratic Party. But anyway, you know, the CDP has really fallen out with the people of the Cayman Islands. And in fact, anyone who ran with the CDP in the last election outside of West Bay, because West Bay is their stronghold. So McKeever has you guys locked in West Bay. But outside of West Bay, anyone who ran with the CDP party, or was a previous UDP member or UDP minister or elected official, they were really tainted in the last election by the UDP/CDP. And literally no one who ran with them previously got in. And I think that was a real indictment on how the people think of the CDP and their loss of power. And it's amazing that despite that, they were still very much instrumental in forming this current government, because the numbers were split almost down the middle in terms of the independent numbers, PPM, and then, you know, the few that the CDP brought to the table. So Johan seems to be of the opinion that the next government is going to be a coalition government again. He says neither the PPM or CDP are trusted enough to form the government on their own, just like in 2013 and 2017. But wait a minute, 2013 wasn't a PPM-led government?
I think so.
It was. So I don't know what he means by that. I think in 2013, I mean, I can go back to election results, but as we get closer to the election, we'll be delving into a little bit of history of how Caymanians were voting. But 2013, the PPM had a PPM government. I mean, they had Minister Wayne Panton, they had Minister Ozzie Bodden, they had Minister Marco Archer, which all three of them ended up losing their ministerial seats in the 2017 election. So they were all PPM members. So I didn't think that was a coalition government. Last time, which would have been the first time that we had the one man, one vote system, definitely was a coalition government. So it's interesting, Alric, to hear your comments that you thought initially that Joey might have been the person actually getting the PPM leadership role. My most interesting thing, I mean, I don't really care too much who leads the PPM at some level, but obviously there is the possibility that they could be the next premier of the Cayman Islands. But what I find incredibly interesting is how this was done from a party constitution perspective, for the benefit of those who may not know. When the PPM was formed, as with most political parties, they have a constitution for the party. So that tells them how they're going to operate. It's kind of like their playbook, the rules by which they will do things. And there is a way of nominating people to be in certain roles, such as the party leader. And I think that is why the person who I spoke to on Friday said to me, you know, they were kind of towing the line, the politically correct and the legally correct line that said discussions are happening, but nothing is final until the conference is held. But I always thought, and this is where people like Denny Warren Jr. and others who are still very much entrenched in the PPM, they can clarify this for me, but I actually thought that the voting didn't take place until they were making preparations for the conference. And then that is when the person was actually confirmed. But for the premier to make this announcement yesterday, obviously he does not have to wait on party leaders or party members even, or the leadership for that matter, to vote. This seems like a decision that was made. It's a done deal. And the other time that this has happened historically that caused a rift in the PPM is when Mr. McLaughlin himself, Alden, became the leader of the party. Because I've told you guys this before, but I was one of the founding members of the PPM, the People's Progressive Movement. So I was there, and I remember a lot of the back and forth and what clauses were going to go into the party's constitution. Some real instrumental people in that would have been like Billy Adam. He was actually, Mr. Billy he holds the card for being the first member ever of the PPM. And, you know, people like myself and Denny Warren, we spent countless nights sitting up. I remember at Denny's place in Georgetown, trying to fine tune different positions for the party and work on things that they needed in terms of like research and so on, right? I actually, and again, a lot of people do not know this, but I set up the PPM's office. It used to be Mr. Tommy Bodden's building. Did all of the office setup, went out and bought computers and the whole 9 yards. So I was very much the first office secretary was actually me, or office manager, whatever they wanted to call it, right? So I was very much instrumental in the early days in the PPM movement. And so I find it interesting that these decisions are made that don't necessarily follow the constitutional procedure for the party's constitution. So the person who said to me that, you know, the conference is when the voting and so forth will take place is correct. But we see that Alden does not always follow procedure. And so in the case of him becoming premier, when Mr. Arden, because it was kind of between him and Arden, those were the two kind of top people in the PPM at the time. I know that the reason that Arden left the party is because Arden got wind that basically what Alden was doing behind his back is he was going, because it was a little bit more formal at that time. So we did have a meeting and people got to do some voting. And he was actually going behind people's back behind at least Arden's back in advance of the meeting to secure his votes. So I wouldn't call it vote in the scenes. And so he knew that by the time they were doing this vote, that basically the vote was a farce. It was already prearranged, and he was already, it was, what's his name? Kurt Tibbetts was already ready to hand over the reins to Alden. And there was no way that Arden was going to get it. And shortly after that, Arden left the party and he resigned. So some of the individuals who have left the party in more recent years, or more recent times, I should say, including Wayne Panton, including Ozzy Bodden, and who else has recently resigned? It has really been because the PPM leadership, being Alden McLaughlin, has not presented what they thought was the standards that they, stand for. And so I think the last thing for Wayne, for example, and Ozzy was the fact that the PPM did not stand firmly against the actions of the current Speaker of the House when he assaulted a woman. So anyway, Alric, coming back to your surprise a little bit, I guess, that Mr. McTaggart is actually the next leader. We were not surprised here. And I think on many levels, this makes sense. He is well respected in the community. He does have a finance background, as you said. He was a partner of KPMG. He actually was in, I think it was BVI. He's worked with the Chamber of Commerce. He, as chairman of Cayman Airways, so he's worn many hats and he's well seasoned, so to speak. And I think his personality is also a lot more even tempered for sure than some of what we have in there now.
Yeah, so, definitely for what we have to face next year. We don't have the normal tourism revenue. Sectors are down. So we do need someone with an understanding of finances and understanding of business to really keep us our record straight. So yes, before the premier announced this, many people were talking about Joey Hugh being the next premier, but perhaps that changed internally, or perhaps even Mr. Hugh is surprised by the announcement. We don't know. It'll be very interesting to see what his reaction is. And it will also be interesting what argument the other members of, whoever's elected in 2021, it will be very interesting to see what their argument is. Do you think that the premier role could be put on a ballot as well, rather than having the elected members choose the premier?
Well, I think that's one of the things that had been suggested before when we were looking at making some changes to the voting system, the one man, one vote. And unfortunately, I think maybe the average voter thinks that that's a great idea. But when it comes to how the party systems are operating, I'm not sure how well that would work, because you could end up having someone that the people want as premier, but the other members that person has to work with not being necessarily keen on that. And you could see where that would cause, immediate issues. So on some level, it makes sense, since they have to work together and they have to run the government, for them to decide who gets what positions. And I know that there's a bit of horse trading involved in that. And sometimes it's not always logical. But at the end of the day, the parties do agree. They'll have their falling outs in between for sure, as we've seen in the past. But at least the parties do have the opportunity to agree and to accept their roles. If you try to force someone, say, for example, you put someone on the ballot and for whatever reason, they actually, might have had a change of mind after the government was formed about being premier or whatever. How would that even work? Would you expect them to go back to the people and say, well, now that I see who's in the government, I no longer want to be a leader of this group. I don't want to be responsible for the shit show that they might be involved in. Or there could be so many things, I think, that happen after the electorate speaks, that I do think, although there are some inherent problems with how it is done, I think that that's probably the best way with the quote unquote political parties that we have and how the government itself is then formed. So as people know, you go in, you vote for your representatives, but you voting for your district representative doesn't give you any idea at all of who will actually form the government. It depends on who wins. And so, for example, a lot of people were very, very surprised at how this last government came together because there was a bit of back and forth. The opposition members were this close to pulling it off, but they refused. And there was a few of them who were very, very vocal, and hopefully they will come back before the next election and refresh their memories of the process. They refused to basically work with Mr. Bush. They thought he was too much of a liability. And I remember one of them saying to me, listen, Sandy, every single time this man returns to power, he does something to screw it up. And screw it up is a nice way of saying what they said to me. They actually use a totally different word. But, they say he just cannot help himself. There's something inherently wrong where he just always is going to mess it up. And they pointed out, going back to the Cayman, what was it called? Cayman Bank. Remember the name of the bank?
First Cayman Bank.
First Cayman Bank. So there was that fiasco. There was a few others throughout the years. He got arrested. Obviously, he was eventually vindicated, but he was removed from his own UDP party. They basically ousted him as premier at that time, as leader of government business at that time as well. So he always has had a rocky road politically. And so the persons who were in the opposition were saying that they thought it was too much of a risk to put him back into a position of power. And unfortunately, he was like, I'm at the top here because you need my 4 guys or my 3 guys or whatever it was in West Bay to even put together coalition government. And if you want it to happen, you got to pay the piper. And paying the piper politically in this sense meant that he was either going to get a ministerial position, Minister of Tourism, which I think is one of his favorite ministries to have, or even premier. I mean, there was all kind of crazy talk that he wanted to have the premiership. So unfortunately, the independents said no way. And so that cost them the ability to form a government. They maintained that they stood on principle. And, it is what it is. Now, they also did not expect certain people, such as Austin Harris, to move over to the government side, which he did. So going back to your question, Alric, I think because there is this degree of horse trading that happens, and people are inherently selfish, no matter who they are, they're then thinking about what they want. So I thought it was interesting that you mentioned, for example, Chris Saunders as potentially being the next premier. Chris Saunders hasn't even been a minister yet. So the chances of him becoming a premier, in my mind, anytime soon would be slim to none.
It's also complex because I think he's going to run with Mr. Arden.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Arden will probably see premier as a next step for him and,
right.
and his career objective. So I think working with Mr. Arden, I think it would be difficult, but not impossible for Chris Saunders to be considered based on his background in finance and what we need in terms of managing finances properly in the next couple.
And why do people think, let me just ask you this question, and perhaps we can throw this out there to get our audience involved in the conversation as well. Why do people think that Arden is the next premier? Like, why does that make sense from the opposition's perspective?
No, I didn't say that. No, I didn't say that. What I'm saying is, I would think that if Mr. Arden is a longer serving person, then Chris Saunders,
Mm-hmm.
both of them run together, I would have thought that Mr. Arden would have said he's the most likely choice for premier since he's been there a longer period of time and he's had a ministry. So I'm thinking
Mm-hmm.
that's the approach Mr. Arden might take. If he gets reelected, because
Right.
he has some competition up in the East End in terms of Isaac Rankin. So we'll have to see how that plays out as well.
Okay, so that's interesting. This whole longevity concept seems to be one that civil servants know all too well. So oftentimes it's not about qualifications or how qualified you are, but it's about, okay, you've been there long enough, you deserve a promotion or you deserve a position. Bertha says that, and he is useless. She's referring to Saunders. Oh, I'm surprised by that. Bertha, I would love to hear why you think Chris Saunders is useless. Because actually, a lot of people would probably disagree with you and say that Chris Saunders has actually done quite a good job with his constituents, or for his constituents. And he, sits on the Public Accounts Committee. He's involved in the Legislative Assembly, and he seems to bring some good policy and salient points to the table. So when you say he's useless, expand on that perhaps a little bit so that we can understand why you think that that's the case. Now, remember, guys, I want to remind you guys, Linda, Bertha, Mr. Walton, Andy, any of you are always welcome to join me on the program. Remember when we had Cindy on as just a citizen having her viewpoint and we had a little bit of a debate? So by all means, extend yourself, come on the show, bring your comments on. We're glad to bring you on the video if you'd like, and let us know exactly what your thoughts are on these things. So Johan Moxham has shared an opinion piece that he wrote in August of 2020 for HUMANE News Service. And we're happy to promote Wendy this morning, Mr. Johan, just for you. And he's suggesting that you have a read of that where he talks about political cults of personality. So I don't even need to read it. I can tell you from the title alone, what Johan is basically saying is that we don't have political parties built on ideologies or any differences like that, like you would have in the US, for example. You've got the conservatives and you've got the Democrats who tend to be more liberal, and they have policies like, the Democrats tend to be pro-choice, and they want police reform and all these other things. So their policy positions, when someone says, oh, I'm a Republican, you can kind of summarize or sum them up on some of the major issues. In the Cayman Islands, we are not divided in that way when it comes to politics. And that is why he's saying that it's driven by the he's
right. He is right. Mr. Moxham is right, because when you look at other countries, you see not only they have a deep manifesto, but it's a philosophy that's behind it. So you find that some people are the Labour Party. They're interested in jobs for the people. You find that other parties have a different policy approach. They're there for big business. It's growth and development for big business, and constantly bringing in foreign investment. So we don't have that type of separation based on policy. We don't have a history of voters being educated and voting based on policy. We tend to vote on personality. And that's one of the things that I think Mr. Moxham is pointing out, is that if we were a more mature voting bloc, where we brought information together, we researched, we listened to the policy positions of the candidates and the elected officials, the incumbents, and we compare those positions, we compare those arguments, and we look at the advantages and disadvantages of each candidate based on the policy position, then voters would be making a more informed decision. However, that is not what was happening. That's not what has happened over the years. So although we try to say we have different parties and these parties you should vote for this party rather than the other party.
Mm-hmm.
No real difference between the Cayman parties. It's just a grouping of personalities, and the members of those parties may argue differently, but the reason that we have the same results every 4 years, we have people that have a mandate. They go into the House. It then becomes political theater because a lot of people are loyal to their campaign contributors. So
Mm-hmm.
we have in the end is basically a political theater. People saying that they agree with this or don't agree with that, but really the decision is already made before they get to the House, and
Right.
they just have to go through the process. So Mr. Markson is right. We need to get to a point where we are looking at the policy positions of incumbents and new candidates. We vote on. We make an informed decision when we vote.
Yes. All right. Well, guys, check out his. I mean, basically, I think that's exactly what Mr. Moxham is saying. But I mean, my thing is this: maybe all political parties in the Cayman Islands to date, and they're struggling to put together another party, are really all about supporting big business because Cayman is too small not to do that in politics. I don't know. That's a question that that's why the people always get the short end of the stick, because money has power, and in a place as small as the Cayman Islands, that power reaches far and reaches the crevices of the political arena very, very quickly. I mean, you hear some stories about politicians and ex-politicians, penning deals that benefit them. And there's a famous saying, I forget the exact term that they use, but there's a prior politician and minister. People always say anytime he went to broker a deal, it was always, his hand was always out. Like, what am I getting out of this kind of a thing? And they had a term that they called him. I forget exactly what it was now, but, because he was always looking for some sort of favor, some sort of kickback. And, maybe that's just how politics works in the Cayman Islands. And do the people ever expect any better, especially when the average politician has been in there for 20, 25 years? Yeah. So, Miss Bertha says that he's very good at informing you and keeping you informed, and that's all, literally. Well, Miss Bertha, I do have a question about that, and we see some other comments and points coming in here, but what else do you expect Mr. Saunders to do? He's actually an opposition member. So his ability to affect change, and this is one of the points that I know Mr. Georgetown Central Kenneth Bryan has said really bothers him, that as a backbencher, he feels that if he gets reelected again in 2021, sitting on the backbench for another 4 years for him is going to be a very challenging and difficult position, because he feels like he is not affecting change. And so I think that, Bertha, it really depends on how you see or how you define what affecting change actually means. So, for example, in my mind, everyone in the Legislative Assembly has some role to play. So even if you are a member of the opposition, I got to be honest with you, I always find it peculiar that first-term persons elected actually think that they should get a ministry. I hear Coco scratching on the CMR door. I'm going to let her in here in a second. But, just sort of thinking out loud about this, even for them, it is detrimental for a first-time elected officials to become a minister, because you are then so focused on running chief officers, ministry that has, various departments, dozens of departments, that you really lose touch with the constituents that got you elected. And there's only so much that you can do. There's only 20. Alec, give me 1 second. I'm going to let you take over the seat because Coco looks like you lost your mind.
So I think two things are happening in Cayman. One is that political parties tend to be influenced by big business, and they tend to execute the interests of big business. We see this in how the laws are prepared. Sometimes laws are drafted by big corporations and their interest. The thing that's happening in Cayman is that we must realize how laws are actually passed. If something is not in the interests of England, then England may reject it. So when we look at the definition of legislature not only includes the members of the Legislative Assembly, but it includes Her Majesty, I think it is, or at least a representative of Her Majesty. So the Constitution actually says the legislature passes laws, and the legislature is not just the members of the Legislative Assembly. So we must appreciate the actual construction of what we have here in the Cayman Islands. So on one hand, England is expecting us to pursue things that are not against its interests. And on the other hand, we have politicians executing the special interests of big corporations.
Yes.
But I just want to say, going back to the comment about Chris Saunders, I think in my view, he seems to be a very detailed, very intelligent person. But like you say, he hasn't had a ministry yet, and maybe that will also impact.
And you know what, Alec, this goes back to my point. And I want to really say this because I know that some persons were saying this over the weekend. I briefly touched on it during my special segment on Sunday, because you guys know that normally I don't do a live stream on a Sunday. However, there's this, people will say, and we had Miss, oh gosh, what's her name again? She's a welcome from, I can't remember her name now. But anyway, we had, she jumped in the conversation on Sunday. I can't remember her first name now, but Miss Welcome.
Well, Miss Romelia, I think.
Romelia, yes. So she was having some comments to make in terms of, political candidates getting out there and letting people know and see the things that they do. And she felt like, and I think there's 2 points here that need to be made. Number one, the first question is, and this ties into what Bertha is saying about Mr. Saunders. The first question is who or what's the motive for what they do? So you have people in this community who assist and help people all the time, even before they became politically involved, right? So if this is just a continuation of something that they have always done, they've always been, community minded, they've always assisted people in various capacities. And now that they have decided to run for public office, they've either done one or two things. They've either ramped it up a bit, or they do post more about the things that they do. Because at some point, let's be honest here, if they're not out there self-promoting themselves, or as Kim Annan would say, tooting their own horn, who's going to be doing it for them? They do not have an arm of government officials. They don't have GIS writing press releases for them. They don't have, anybody else putting out where they're at and what they're doing. Elected members who are part of the current government have that advantage. And there was a couple examples. It's so funny that as I said that on Sunday, and I was scrolling through stuff on social media in particular, there were a few glaring examples that popped up. So for example, the governor, he is the type of person who every single time he does something, he posts it on social media. He's letting you people know what it is that he's doing. And in fact, I was shocked and surprised to hear the governor say a couple days ago that he was the first governor, according to the Lighthouse School, to actually tour and visit their facility. I thought to myself, what? That can't be right. And I double checked with his office and they said, listen, this is what the Lighthouse School told us. And I thought, wow, that is shocking. But if the governor didn't post on his page that he's doing this and he's doing that, would you even know what the governor's doing? Would you have a clue? You'd be sitting down saying, oh, this governor never does anything. And I mean, look at this. On the 12th of October, he posted how he had visited the Lighthouse School. This was on Monday. Some of what he did. The Savannah Primary School was there performing. He performed in his drums. He had a few pictures up. This had an enormous response from people. They loved it. One person says, "Thank you for visiting our special needs school. Everyone there does an amazing job, and our children are in such great hands." Before that, he'll put up stuff about the press conferences. So it's kind of like the world that we live in. Everyone now has some access to social media. And by them posting the things that they're doing, I don't see that as necessarily being disingenuous. I think the first question you need to ask yourself is, what is this person's history, right? If they already have a history of community service, and this isn't just to get your vote, they're genuinely concerned about people in the community eating meals and at least getting one hot meal a day, and they genuinely care about the environment, so they will get up at 6 o'clock on a Sunday morning or Saturday morning, like Alwick did this past weekend, and go and clean up the beaches. To me, that speaks volumes about the type of person that you are possibly electing, and what they stand for. And honestly, if there's no degree of self-promotion or getting information out there in terms of what's going on with their candidates, how will you, the people, make an informed decision? So let me throw that back at you, Bertha. When you say that he's very good at keeping people informed, do you know that at least for the past 3 or 4 years, every single year, Chris Saunders, without fail, has put together backpacks for distribution with school materials and school supplies for the school children in his constituency? So he doesn't just keep you informed. He's making sure that his constituents, the children in his constituency, have the ability to go to school with the materials, the learning materials that they need. Are you aware, for example, that Mr. Saunders actually will assist university children financially, giving them, whether it's just some pocket money or assisting them with books or tuition money, so that they can go back to university in a much more comfortable position? When you make a comment like that, like he's basically useless, it means to me that maybe one or two things are happening here. Either you just don't know, or Mr. Saunders needs to step up his game and letting you, the people, know what he's actually been up to for the past 4 years. And if he doesn't do it, nobody else is going to do it. So I think it's very interesting when people say, well, why are you, there is a fine line. And I appreciate, for example, that if you are a recipient of a donation, that you may not want people to know that you're the recipient of a donation. It certainly depends on what it is and what it's for. So there is a potential privacy issue there, that some people are uncomfortable with that. And again, my biggest thing is the motive. Let's take, for example, what's his name? Matthew Leslie, right? We saw Matthew Leslie has now ran for political office twice. He's not been successful. Matthew is the type of person where he posts every single thing on social media. That's just who he is. A lot of people get the sense that it's not genuine. That's certainly for you all to decide. My opinion is it isn't genuine. And I have seen things behind the scenes why I have come to that opinion. But I remember there was a time when he went to this lady. I don't know that she's challenged necessarily, but she could be a little bit cognitively challenged. So, he went to, we're going to come in and clean up the trash at your house. And his primary concern was just to get her on video, like, oh, we're doing you this big favor by cleaning up the garbage that's sitting in your yard at the government housing facility that used to be by Jose's Esso, which, by the way, in case you haven't noticed, they've actually torn it down. And I've been meaning to go by there and get some video footage because I want to put that in the news. But anyway, we'll talk about that later on. But, his disingenuousness in that particular case backfired on him, because she went on record and she did this video that had kind of gone viral, where she was like, I don't like how you did this. And so sometimes when you're helping people, yes, you have to, if you want to then put out videos or pictures or whatever of the fact that you've assisted someone, if it's coming from a good place, you will definitely clear it with that individual before doing so. And there will be people who will literally say, you know what, no, thank you. If your donation is contingent on something else, then I don't want it. And unfortunately for Mr. Leslie, he has a reputation of his assistance to people always being contingent on other things. And there have been lots of women in this community who can share their personal experiences in relation to that. Atlas says, what department is Mr. Alric Lindsay running for? So Atlas, I know that you are a young voter in the Cayman Islands, and you're actually overseas. So I'm kind of spinning, so I don't know what's going on there with the connection, but so make sure that you get your ballots in once they're available from the elections office, and we will keep you all informed on how this process works, when nomination day is and the whole works, right? But Atlas, it's not a department, so it's a political office. And so there are various constituencies in the Cayman Islands. We now have 19 since the one man, one vote system went into place for the 2017 election. So remember, we used to have Georgetown had like 4 seats, West Bay had 4 seats. Most of those have maintained the same numbers of seats. They've just been divided up into smaller districts, voting districts or constituencies. So Alric Lindsay is running for Georgetown South. At the moment, the serving member of Georgetown South is Barbara Connolly. So that's where Mr. Alric is running. Sai says that she's not into politics, but I think we need more women to run. Sai, good point, and let's discuss that just a tad bit here.
Yeah, let's get Sandra to run.
No. In the last election, we had more women that ran than ever before. And so that was interesting. And despite that, we still only managed to elect 3 women to the Legislative Assembly, 3 out of 19. So I think having more women run is one thing. Having probably more qualified women qualified for elected office that are forces to be reckoned for run is a whole other thing. There's so many things that play into women running for politics. You know, they're up against some heavy hitters in the male department. And the moment that a woman decides that she's going to be a heavy hitter, let me get one of my buttons ready here because this is so appropriate. What happens? You know, it's one of those things where, oh, she's a bitch, she's a this. Like, a woman can't be vocal, a woman can't have an opinion. She can't say politically, you know, this is where I stand on this issue. Or, you know, she's expected to be a traditional Caribbean woman where you're seen and not heard sort of situation. So even the women that we have in political office at the moment, I'm not particularly impressed by any of them, I've got to be honest. Although some of them tend to be the worker bees. Like, they take the list from their leaders and the leaders say, you go do this, you execute this, this is what we want you to do. But they have no real political say. And given the fact that our population is by and large women, we outnumber the men in this population, we have specific issues that, you know, are important to us, whether it's issues relating to maternity leave, benefits in the community as a woman, just having our voice have a key importance in the policy development in this country. We don't see a whole lot of that going on when we have men in the Legislative Assembly who can beat a woman into a pulp and still sit in that honorable house and still sit in the chair of Speaker of the House, and not a single elected woman. So not Juliana O'Connor Connolly, who walks with her Bible under her arm, not Barbara Connolly, and not Tara Rivers. None of these women have had a single thing to say about why it is wrong for an elected member to have publicly or even privately, but in this case is a public assault, publicly assaulted a woman, and how as women, we need to start having the discussion about, you know, making sure the laws are as tight as they need to be to protect both women and children from any form of abuse, because those protections are not always as tight as they need to be. So Sai says they need to change the salary rate. The cost of living is ridiculous and it's way too expensive. So she's advocating for perhaps a higher minimum wage. So we have tons of comments. Let's just, Sue is in agreement with maybe what Sai said. Sai also says that people need to speak up and talk. What needs it? And talk. What does it need to change? And what needs to change in Cayman? Okay, very good. Hi, Catherine. Good morning to you, my dear. Sue agrees, saying not like the 3 that we have now. We need some good, strong women. But I'm telling you, in this community, a good, strong woman is not something that most people appreciate. Sai also wants to know why the same people are running for elections again. Why can't we have new people?
Well, can I jump in there?
Yes.
I think to answer Sai, what tends to happen is people realize that when they throw in their hat for politics, they will get victimized. So people will start to target them. They will lose their business, lose their business connections. They will have a difficulty getting a job if they don't get reelected. Look at the case of Jonathan Piercy, for example, who's a hardworking guy, a smart guy, but since his involvement in politics and since he tends to tell the truth about the situation in Cayman, if he goes to apply for a job, it'll be very difficult for him. And it's happened to many other people. So to answer Sai, that's one reason. People don't want to get victimized. People don't want to lose their income and opportunities for jobs. And the other reason is that some of the people who would be excellent in politics, like Sandra Hill, for example, some of those people are actually busy running their own business with other affairs. And so some of the really good people actually don't run because they have so many other things going on and they have different priorities. And you have another set of people who think, well, do I have to be a politician to make a change? And they say, well, work from the background and try to influence policy change. So I think those are the 3 sort of different reasons, just to help Sai to understand why you tend to see the same people over and over. So those are 3 of the reasons.
Yeah. And I think too that partly what Alec is saying in terms of victimization, not even just victimization, but some people are very private individuals. So they don't care to, when you run for political office, you know that your life will be put on display. Your mistakes, your accomplishments, everything will be fodder for public discussion. And so, when we sit here, for example, even on this show, and we talk about the hypocrisy of our elected officials, how they do one thing in their personal lives and they pretend to be something that they're not politically, that becomes fair game. You become a public figure when you throw your hat into elected office. And so people will start to question decisions that you've made, not just in the terms of the community, but in your personal life, because they feel like that has some impact or some implications on who you are. So it's all out there. So you have to be willing to take that risk. And there are people who don't necessarily want to put their families on the line when it comes to taking that sort of a risk as well. So Aliana says, I feel a lot, and I mean a lot, get in only to flip-flop after they drink the Kool-Aid and stand against the people for the means of pleasing the rich. Definitely. Flip-flopping is one of the biggest political attributes, I think, of an elected official. And Alric typed here that he hit the nail on the head, and he's agreeing with that. So Sai, stay tuned. I'm actually going to post that as a separate news story. There is something going there. It's a government entity. So I'm going to tell you more about that in a while. Pedro says that GTS is her constituency. So Alric, maybe you want to reach out to her to make sure that she has your contact details. Atlas says, Miss Sandy for mayor. Atlas, we need to bring you up to speed, my friend, on the terms that we use here in the Cayman Islands. And it's definitely not mayor, young man, but we will get you sorted out and educate you with all the correct terms. Sorry, Miss Renika says, yes, Sandy, you're correct. Melita says Sandy for premiere. Oh my gosh, you guys are. Where's another button? I need to let's do this one.
How you doing?
How you doing, Melita? Bertha says, firstly, I've never depended on anyone from government for personal favors, but what I would like from my representative is to make sure all roads have signs. Kids going to school are more safe on the road and have when having to take the bus, and other little things that you don't have to be in a big position to do. And she thanks me for the information, Mr. Saunders. Good to know. Hope you all have a great day. Bertha, that's really important. And you know what? Clear signage is something that the NRA, the National Roads Authority, is actually responsible for. But sometimes what I find that happens to Bertha and everyone else listening, some of these government agencies kind of fall down on their jobs if we, the public, don't say something about it. And that is why I think the most powerful position in this country is not that of premier, but it's that of media and having a voice and having access to 40,000 followers between Instagram and Facebook, so that when we post something, people pay attention, including the NRA, including the Department of Environment, including the premier. That's why he's always trying to cuss us out, because he thinks that we make him look bad, because we are all about accountability here on CMR. So trust me, if you want to continue to see change in a positive way for this country, you need to be smart about who you elect in 2021, as well as, we're going to be here throughout the entire process as your go-to location for all things political. Because in my mind, politics in the Cayman Islands isn't just about politics. This is our lives, folks. So Mr. Walton says that the horse trading after elections has been a part of the Cayman political landscape forever, and I agree. One fix is a properly working political party system. Only as good as the people involved, folks. And I think most persons knows this, but we all have failed to put together properly functioning parties, so horse trading will be around for some time. Here's the thing about it, Mr. Walton. It's not even about having the mechanisms and systems in place, because like I was saying earlier, they're in place for the PPM because I was part of that process. So I know that the Constitution is there, and I know what the Constitution said at the time, and I'm pretty sure that has not changed very much. It is about people respecting the process. So again, this goes back to the individuals that you have elected to political office, and them respecting the process and respecting the very Constitution under which they operate within the political party. And so I think what happens in the Cayman Islands is we have a lack of political maturity when it comes to party politics. And we are not as entrenched in party politics as some places, such as Jamaica, for example, or Barbados, the Bahamas. They have parties that have been around a lot longer. And so their longevity and their history means that they're a little bit more organized, perhaps. Although ideologically, what do they stand for? What's the ideological difference between in Jamaica? What are the parties there again? The help me out here, Alric. They just had an election, so I should know this.
GLP
and the PLP, or is it PLP?
PNP and GLP.
PNP, right. So yeah, what's the ideological differences between them? There probably isn't one either, because this is part of Caribbean politics, folks. So Sai is in agreement with something I said. Thank you, Sai. Sue is also in agreement. She says, absolutely right. It's a disgrace to allow this to happen. And still nobody in Savannah who stands out to vote for. Not yet, Sue, not yet. However, I have faith that somebody is going to be stepping up to the plates. We did have Miss Gina come forward, but unfortunately, we haven't heard anything else from her. So this is my thing, right? We've had a few persons who have declared early. In my mind, the only reason why you should declare early is that you need to hit the ground running and get people, knowing who you are and what you stand for. So for Johan Moxham, for example, he has said for the next government, we need to look at the candidates and the incumbents and figure out what they stand for, what have they done in leadership roles, who do they represent, and examine the track record of their personal and professional endeavors. Same thing we're saying here, folks. And so the only way we can know some of those things is by persons such as Alric coming on the program and letting us know what he's all about, what he stands for, what are some of the issues that he is involved in, and what he's passionate and concerned about. So Alric, let me ask you a question. Oh, it's 9 o'clock. Do you have to go right now?
No, I'm waiting on dial-in details.
I'm sorry, you're breaking up.
I'm waiting on the dial-in.
Oh, okay. So he's waiting on his conference call details. All right. So, we actually have had, in case you guys missed it, we've done a conversations with segment with Alric Lindsay. So there's a couple very critical things that we are doing here as part of the election process for election 2021 of educating the people in the Cayman Islands. Our conversations with segment is one where we dig a little bit deeper into who the candidates are outside of just talking about political issues. So Mr. Alric is obviously on here talking about, what happened in LA and those sorts of things. But Alric Lindsay is an individual. He is a person with accomplishments, perhaps failures. He grew up in Georgetown Central or Georgetown South, Windsor Park. And so, we want to know more about him and who he is. And so the sort of thinking behind the conversations with segment is that we will dig deep. We will answer the questions that are on the minds of a lot of people, like who the heck is Alric Lindsay? What is he all about? Where did he grow up? Where did he come from? Who your father, who your mama is, who your daddy be? All these things. And then when it comes to politics, we're going to be having a special segment called Speakeasy. And the Speakeasy segment will be more on the issues and the politics of things here in the Cayman Islands. So I know that Mr. Alric is due very, very soon for another conversations with segment, because we kind of left off on seeing him start to get into we talked more about his childhood and him getting into his professional career a little bit. So we need to pick up there and continue so we can bring you guys all up to speed. So Alric, we do need to sort of schedule that soon.
Well, let's do that this weekend if you have time, because it'll be great to go through the university experience.
Yes.
Race relations in the United States, and then coming back to Cayman and what that experience was like as a professional.
Yeah. And so I think, again, that, we've had several persons declare, and maybe they're doing a lot of groundwork, but I think it's to their own detriment for them not to be getting out there and putting their faces so you can say, oh, yeah, I know who that person is. Because when you go to the polls, let's be honest, Cayman is so small. You should not see a name on the ballot that you don't know who that person is. You should be like, oh, yes, I remember seeing this person, CMR. And, you should feel like you know them on a more intimate level, because, hello, the Cayman Islands, we've got maybe 25,000 people on the electorate. It's not that big. So it's actually not that hard to reach a vast amount of people and let them know who you are and what you stand for.
Yeah, I mean, CMR is like really the only independent alternative that we have, because if you look at the fact that that TV station, Cayman 27, is gone, the only other thing we have is the government TV. And what the government TV, well, the commentary is that if the information is not coming from the government, then it's fake news. I think we need to go beyond that. We need to get past that and realize that if we're going to have this fair and transparent elections and fair and transparent news, I think we need to formally recognize, CMR as a leading media outlet. And it's not just a blog site, as some people say. It is a leading media outlet that people tune into to get the information first. So I think more candidates, more incumbents need to come and see CMR and do those conversations with, and let the people get to know them.
Mm-hmm. The interesting thing Alaric, is, we don't even pay attention to the naysayers and the negativity because they represent a very small portion of the community now. But what I've always found interesting is when people use the term blog, they themselves don't even know what a blog is. I remember this is well over a year ago when we were first getting established with the court's office. And we were going through the process because as media, you have to register with the courts in order to be able to go in and see files and this sort of thing. And we were going through that process. I remember that there was a judgment that came down. I think it was in relation to Chantel Day, the first judgment with them. And there was a lady there who works at the court's office. She's just like a bailiff. She's one of the few female bailiffs, actually. And she was refusing to give us a copy of the judgment. Literally, I'm there and I'm like, I'd like a copy of the judgment. You've given it to CNS, you've given it to the Compass. And she had extra copies and she just wouldn't give us one. And so I found it astonishing that a civil servant could decide that a judgment, which by the way is a public document, she was not going to give to us. And then when I said, well, why not? She proceeded to say, well, you're just a blog, you're not media. Now, I'm insulted by that because this woman doesn't have the intelligence to know the difference between a blog and media. And a blog is a format, and media houses can have blog. And so people, when they use that term blog here in the Cayman Islands, they are using it in a way where they're attempting to insult you. Oh, you're just a blog. And then I say to them, okay, well, what does a blog mean? They have no idea. What is the technical difference between a blog and a news website? Because a blog is a format that people use. Do you know a blog when you see a blog versus something that isn't a blog? They don't have a clue. But what I have come to realize is that people think if they use the term blog versus saying, okay, you're a media house or you news media, somehow that is supposed to diminish your impact or how people see you. You guys know that we could care less about names. You can call us anything. But one thing we do know is Cayman Monroe is on the tongue of everyone who's interested in what is happening here in the Cayman Islands. So I think it's interesting, Alec, that you make those comments that the government has continually tried to refer to us as a blog and keep us on the fringes. And all they have done is make people think, well, why would the government be targeting media in any way, any shape at all, and in particular CMR. So there you have it, folks. And we continue to host this morning show, which we've been doing since the COVID pandemic. And I can tell you that you guys have responded amazingly to this show. And we now have the #1 podcast show in the mornings. So do I look like I'm worried about blogs? Kathy Wilkes has joined the conversation. And she explains that some candidates run for public office more than once because after getting involved in politics, they develop relationships with the constituents and genuinely want to be part of the change movement. And she's running again, her second time now in West Bay Central, I believe. West Bay West?
West Bay Central, that's where...
Central is Tara.
Captain Newton.
No, Captain Newton, right. So it's West Bay Central, yes. And she says that I'm running again because I believe in the people. And I really feel that there are people hungry for change. And well, as we have said before in this program, Kathy came within 93 votes of taking out an incumbent who has been there for quite some time. Sai is enjoying the conversation this morning. She says she's got to take mom to Walmart. So she's wishing us all a wonderful day. Oh, the days of walking into Walmart. Everybody's now feeling jealous, Sai. Yes, Sue says, I wish I'm going to send you my Walmart list, girl. Sue says she wished that she could go to Walmart right about now. So do I. I mean, whoever thought that there'd be a day that would be missing walking into Walmart, honestly. The world has changed. You got everybody reminiscing here. Karen is like, oh, Sai. Me too. I want to walk into Walmart. Take me with you. Yes, thank you so much, Runika, for that comment. Yeah, we try to keep you guys informed. Now, listen, are we the London Telegraph? Are we all about serious news all the time? No. That's why, hence the news came on Mall Road. We bring you everything. There are times that we think things are funny that are happening in the community, and we're going to bring you those things. It's like the video that we shared yesterday with Craig Marin being knighted. Let me share it again in case you guys missed it.
My U.S. words for the fight against COVID.
we now anoint you. Rise, Sir Craig Marin.
Thank you, my brethren.
You're no.
Yeah, I attended that ceremony. I was very, very proud. It was an honor to attend that ceremony. As you can see, jam packed and a lot of dignitaries were there.
Was that OC there in the background?
Yeah, that was Mr. OC there.
Okay.
Being one of the long-standing members of the community, to recognize this great contribution by Mr. Marin. And obviously, Mr. Cole and his family were not able to come, but we recognize them in spirit.
Sai says that's her mom's favorite store. Kathy's feeling a little bit jealous as well that you're going to Walmart. Sai says, I wish Cayman had a Walmart. Well, probably the local businesses wouldn't wish that, because Walmart would put everybody else out of business, believe me. And Caymanians, we're going to support a foreign entity before we support our own. So poor Foster's, Price Right would have to shut down. Bobby Bodden's Cost You Less would have to shut down. Everybody would have to shut down if a Walmart came here. So maybe not. Maybe we just keep things the way they are, but encourage local businesses to be as competitive as possible. Louis says that it's overrated. I'm assuming he is referring to Walmart. Carol is reminiscing about Walmart, Target, and Macy's. When I was a university student, so going back to, I think it was JD, who was mentioning that he's a USF graduate. There was, and there could still be, I don't know, I haven't been to Tampa in a little while, but there was a shopping center very close to the university that we could walk to Target. And we didn't have a Walmart within walking distance, but we could go to Target. So Target was kind of like our go-to spot back in the day. And we used to call it Target. That was like our fancy word for it. Like we felt like we were stepping out from Walmart a little bit when we went to Target. And I remember when Target actually first got started. Isn't that amazing? So Mr. Alric, thank you so much for joining us this morning on the program. Folks, let me remind you, just some final words from Alric, and then I'll do some final announcements.
I will, thank you for allowing me to share my thoughts and, allowing the people to get to know a little more about me here and through your deeper conversations with. I only want to add one thing, and it's that there's a double-edged sword when it comes to posting what you're doing in the community. And on one side of the sword, people are saying, what does this person do in his community? What activities, what contributions has he made? So people want to know what you've done to start to form an assessment about you, about your personality, about your policy. They want to have a full assessment. So they want to visually see and hear about what you're doing. So when you post, you do get to have that engagement, and you do get to increase awareness, and you do get to let people know what it is you're actually doing in the community. Now, the other side of the sword is that when you actually do post, then other people say you're only posting it to get a vote. So it's a very difficult thing to do, because if you can't win, you can't win for losing, so yeah. It's definitely a double-edged sword, and that's really the only thing I wanted to add as a closing. Everyone, please start thinking about the policy positions of your incumbents and your candidates. Don't think about the promises. Think about the policy positions and what they've actually been doing in their communities to help, and make an informed decision in May 2021. Please resist voting on personality only and creating cults of personality rather than voting on policy.
All right. Thank you so much, Alric. And I want to invite you guys to check out Alaric's new page. Let me just put the link here. Follow him on Facebook. He does have a Facebook and an Instagram page now. So check Alric out, like his page so that you can see what he's been up to and what it is that he's doing. And he actually, I think the thing with Alric is he actually does a lot. And so maybe that's why some of you feel like, oh my gosh, he's always posting stuff, because he keeps really busy. Like I tell Alric, I mean, I don't know if Alric has a girlfriend or whatever his personal situation is, but he better be careful that he is giving this individual, attention, because he is so busy. Like over the weekend, he did 2 beach cleanups, both Saturday and Sunday morning. I know that he did a fundraiser on Saturday for Mr. Sorry, let me just pull him out of the stream here. I see that his business call is calling him. So he did a cleanup, the beach cleanups both days. He did a fundraising event for Mr. Taylor. Remember the former high school teacher that had an accident some years ago that has been, really severely impacted by that, his quality of life. So he did a squash tournament, event for that. And there was something else he did. I mean, Alaric just really keeps busy. So you might see him post like one thing from over the weekend that he did. And in fact, it was like way more than that. So don't always assume that someone is posting everything, because in fact, someone like Alaric could be really, really busy. I mean, he did the town hall meeting the other day that Kenneth Bryan hosted. He attended the LA yesterday. So I think Alaric is obviously very much involved in what is happening in the community. And some of you are agreeing with his last point there. And I think he does have a point for sure. So let me invite you. I'm going to send you guys the link so that you can check out his Facebook page. So there it is, Alaric for Cayman, facebook.com/Alaric for Cayman. So check it out and you can get notifications of what's happening in, Alaric's campaign for an elected seat in the May 26, 2021 general election. It's going to be here before you know it, folks. This is already October. And so I'm messaging people and they're like, oh yeah, I'm getting ready. I've declared, but I'm coming. Once you declare, folks, you should already be hitting the ground running. That's the expectation that people have of you. You shouldn't say soon come if you've already declared. If you weren't ready yet, then don't declare. But when you say I'm running for public office, we expect you to be, let's get it. All right, folks. So Sai says, Kathy, they've got lots of sales going on. Oh, they always do. By the way, my other topics for the day, sometimes we have a list of what we'd like to discuss. And honestly, we don't get through all of it. So we roll it over to another day. And so we will do that with some of the topics for today for sure. But let me just have a quick look. I noticed some of you were posting food photos. I'm a foodie, right? So when you start to post your food photos, I get really hungry. Like today, I haven't had my breakfast yet. So I'm like, oh my gosh. Couple of birthday shout outs as well. Simon Boxall, who is the acting deputy director and public education officer over at HAZMAT, has a birthday today. So happy birthday to Simon. We have, oh gosh, let me see who else is having a birthday. We have got quite a few birthdays today, actually. Lots of people having a birthday today. Give me 1 second. I'm going to pull up some of the birthday greetings here. But yesterday, you guys know that it was announced that we have had 4 new positives in the community. And these individuals have a high viral count. They're all travelers into the country. I want us to spend some time talking about that. And I know that the remaining time that we have left in this program just isn't enough time, but the discussion is coming. So listen, guys, today is Thursday. Normally on Thursdays, we have an evening show. However, this evening is going to be a little bit tricky for me because I do want to go and support a member of our local community. So I'm still having a think about how to work out my scheduling, because today is actually quite busy. I've got a number of appointments going on here. But let me just find my birthday. Where are my birthday greetings? But as you guys know, Mr. Frank McField does a lot. He's a playwright and an author. And so he's doing something this evening at the Siemens Hall. So I want you guys to check that out if you can, at 6:30 p.m. It's going to be a discussion on one of his plays. He'll be doing like a screening of it and then a discussion. So we promised Mr. Frank that we would go and, because again, there is no more Cayman 27, folks. So CMR is we're your news source, all things news, community news, video news. We got you covered. So we want to support people in the community who are doing different things. And we did promise Frank that we would go. So because that is 6:30, normally the show starts at 7. That's an impossibility really in terms of scheduling. So I think what we may do is support Mr. Frank as part of the evening show. And then I've actually also committed after that to joining a group of students online, some people who are doing their master's program, as a guest speaker. So the overseas instructor had contacted me and asked me to participate in that as well. And that's right after, I think we're starting at 8:30, 9 o'clock. So I'm going to have a busy night. So just stay tuned, because we'll be live streaming, I think, some of the event at the Siemens Hall there in Prospect. So birthday shout outs to Sophia, Vernon, Addie, Montero, Amanda Langford, Solita Ferrero, Sue Marin. It's Sue's birthday today. Shalita Scott, Chuck Taylor. You guys know Chuck Taylor. He's been a local DJ and radio personality for many, many years. And Sophia Marsh are all celebrating birthdays today. So happy birthday to them. Let's do a little birthday jingle here, folks. Okay, Miss Louis Faye says that she's listening. Thank you so much, my love, for tuning in. So just a few comments. Today is Thursday. So normally on Thursdays, we do a Tech Thursday segment. Obviously, we can't delve into anything in deep discourse at this moment about Tech Thursday, but this has been a big week in the world of technology. So if you follow anything technological, you know that Apple had their annual event this year, which obviously had to be virtual. But, Apple always does these announcements with what's coming down the pipeline now. So they announce their new phones. So they have a whole lineup of new phones. And one of the interesting things that Apple has done this year, which is a little bit different, and it's getting a lot of media buzz and tech news, is that when they sell their new phones, they're no longer going to include the headphone and the charging cable. And that's been a staple of iPhones for many, many years. Like you buy the iPhone, you open it up, and in the kit, they've got the headpiece that you can utilize, as well as your charging cable. So now they've said to help the environment, and let's be honest here, they're a company, so I'm sure for them it's saving money, probably packaging it a little bit differently, saves them millions of dollars. They are going to no longer be including those two components as part of your phone. So you're just going to get the phone. I don't necessarily care about that, because to be honest, I've been an iPhone user for many, many years. And normally when I buy a new iPhone or upgrade, those are actually the two things for me that stay in the box, because I never use them. Like I've got my AirPods, I've got multiple chargers all over the house. So I don't necessarily need to pull out the ones that are in the box. So I think that makes good logical sense for Apple. The other thing that the other big news this week is if you're an Amazon shopper, which I know a lot of you by default have become Amazon shoppers during COVID in particular. And Amazon is now $1 trillion company as a direct result of the pandemic. So Amazon always has all of these wonderful, daily specials on and so on. and they had Amazon Prime Day. So if you don't know what Prime Day is, it's like a membership-based subscription with, what do you call it? With Amazon. And so I've been a Prime member. Gosh, I've lost count of how long I've been a Prime member. A long time. And so as a Prime member, they have this annual Prime Day, and they put on a little bit extra in terms of like sales and stuff like that. So you can get tons of wonderful specials. If you've been meaning to get something, you can check it out and see what items have been featured for Prime Day. So yeah, that's good news in the world of tech. I mean, Amazon is expanding their Alexa devices. So these are the home. I have to be careful how loud I say that because she's always listening to me. We have them in every room. You can use them as intercom systems. You can link them to the Ring doorbell because Amazon purchased the Ring doorbell company. So everything now is integratable. There's so many wonderful features. Like I can have her play music. I can pull up, because we have some of the video ones as well. So I can video call like another room in the house and speak to my husband who's half around the house. It's just lots of great features. And they have actually introduced a whole new line of products as well, both in the Ring line of products as well as the Alexa products also. So lots going on in the world of technology. If you're interested, or you know what, sometimes you just need a pair of shoes or whatever. And all of those things are available online. All right, so that covers it for Tech Thursday news. Like I said, there is a lot that's happening right now in the world of technology, but maybe next week we'll have a little bit more time to delve into it. The public holidays for 2021 have been announced. We did a post on that. Just remember that next year you get an extra holiday because it's an election year. So initially when they sent out the list, they forgot to include that. So I tell you what, topics that we'll carry over to tomorrow, because today was mostly politics, is we'll talk about the COVID situation here in the Cayman Islands, the new COVID cases. We'll talk about the Humane Society's deal with DART, because that deal is now in jeopardy in terms of exact location. And we'll also talk about what has happened with DART and the rugby club, because we've heard some things behind the scenes that are very, very interesting. So I will bid you all adieu. Thank you guys so much for tuning into the program. And listen, thank you for making Cayman Mall Road your #1 go-to source for news, whether it's politics, community news, whatever it's happening here in the Cayman Islands. We appreciate your love and support, and we will continue to strive to improve the quality of what it is that we're offering. We're always working on little things behind the scenes for you to level up our game and to make it that much better. I got my sidekick, Coco, here in the background. She's being awfully quiet today. She's actually looking out the window, and she's enjoying a nice sunny moment peeping out the window here in the Cayman Islands. So all of my beautiful people, Miss Louie Faye, Louie, Ronika, Sai, Kathy, Alric, thank you so much for joining us. Karen, Irvelyn, Miss Sue, Walton, Jake, I hope you're done at the gym. Atlas, you guys are wonderful. And I appreciate the love and the support. And I appreciate you guys tuning in every single morning. You got it locked here on your #1 podcast show for the Cayman Islands. And don't forget, we are now available on other platforms. So if you want to listen to the audio podcast, you can do that as well. So check it out. You can actually now go to Alexa and tell her, I want to listen to Cayman Mall Road. And guess what? You can listen to it through your devices. Karen, thank you. You are most welcome. I want you guys to have a blessed day. Please stay safe. The weather looks good. There's hardly a cloud in the sky, but we are watching a weather system that has the potential to develop. So stay tuned, because it's that time of year, folks, where we got to keep a keen eye on the tropics. So we'll continue to watch that system, and they develop quickly when they form in this particular area. So we'll keep an eye out on things. So have a beautiful day, folks, and we'll speak again this evening for a live stream on location, and then we'll chat again tomorrow morning for sure.
Thank you for tuning in to another edition of The Cold Hard Truth. Make sure to check Facebook for showtimes and more information and the latest news at CaymanMarlRoad.com. Subscribe to our IG and Facebook pages to get the latest happenings.